Today we are talking about the language of existence, and the reason why this is something that we need to understand is because humanity has become caught in a net of words, this sort of trap that they've woven for themselves. And this keeps us isolated in various reality tunnels where we're not understanding what we're saying to each other, even though it seems like we are, because we're communicating seemingly in the same language. But whenever you utter a word, what you do mentally and internally is the other person listening to you sort of has their own definitions for these words and looks them up in their sort of database and then interprets it based on their subjective understanding. And so you get caught in a realm of subjectivity and misunderstanding and misinterpretation. I mean, just as one example, think about the word God. If I say the word God, almost every person is going to interpret that word completely differently. Well, what are you talking about? Are you talking about Zeus? Are you talking about Thor? Are you talking about Jesus? Are you talking about Allah? Are you talking about a cosmic oneness? Are you talking about deism? Are you talking about theism? Pantheism? Panentheism? It's just on and on, all these different possible subjective definitions that individuals will have. And so humanity is caught in this web of words that they've woven, this trap of subjectivity, and it goes even a lot further than this. When people name certain things, when you don't understand something, but as soon as you give something a name, you think that you've understood it, even if you don't. For example, a child will point to something and say, "Oh, what's that?" And you go, "Oh, that's a tree." Well, have you really explained what it is? No, you've just given it a label. But because you've given it a label, you are stuck in this illusion that something has been explained. But nothing has been explained, it's only been described. Because you ask, oh, well, what's a tree? Well, a tree is made of wood. Well, what's wood? Well, it's made of molecules. What's molecules? It's made of atoms. What's atoms? It's made of electrons, protons, neutrons. Well, what are electrons, protons, and neutrons? And you see, you just get caught in this layer, but this sort of Russian doll setting of words. And really nothing has ever been explained. Things have only been given a description or a model, but no knowledge has ever truly been imparted. Knowledge with a capital K, truth with a capital T. And so, you have this dual aspect danger of human invented language where human concepts can never actually capture the essence of reality, and then we all have these different subjective interpretations of what different words mean, and so many disagreements and miscommunications occur because of that. So what we need to do is understand the truth about existence and how language itself, the language of existence itself, the language of reality itself, because the language of existence itself and the language of reality itself is objective. It's not subject to subjectivity. It's not put in this category of subjectivity. And as we see, we're going to explore the frequency language of existence. And we're going to see that there are many different reasons why this is superior to human invented language. I mean, one reason is because human language is static and unmoving. You have these words and boxes. Frequency is in motion. Frequency is in flux. And, you have wave functions changing and merging and expanding, combining with others to form higher structures. And you can't capture these ever-moving, ever-evolving structures in human-invented language, human-invented concepts. And we're also going to see that understanding the frequency nature of existence is objective. It's not subjective, but it's objective. It's universal. And we're going to explore all of this. I don't want to get too ahead of myself here because this is a lot we have to unpack, but it's really important to understand this because human language is important. Language is important. Without it, we wouldn't be able to get along in the world that we live in today. We wouldn't be able to talk or communicate at all. And it's very important for the development of self-awareness. But nonetheless, humanity has been caught in this net that they have woven. It was something that was necessary to create, but now it's important not to get lost in this in this labyrinth of humanity's own creation. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to explore human language versus the language of existence, and we have a lot more to talk about as well. So let's begin. Oh, as always, we are going to be reading some excerpts from The Holographic Soul by Mike Hockney, which is an excellent book, and I highly recommend that you check it out. Very, very good. The link to where you can check it out will be in the description of this video. So let's begin. Humans are permanently conflicted. They are victims of language, of different languages that obey different rules and concepts. Humans think in terms of mythos and logos, words and numbers, everything other than math and math itself. So here we have this idea of, once again, that humans are permanently conflicted, this idea that when we use words, we are going to run into many, many issues because we all have different definitions of what these words mean. And we're talking about the difference between mythos and logos now. So what is mythos? Mythos are stories. Mythos are picture thinking, metaphors. So mythos is, like Bible stories, all religious stories, anything. Logos is mathematics. So you see the difference between stories and picture, stories, picture thinking. This is what the philosopher Hegel called Vorstellung, which means picture thinking. And then logos is reason, is mathematics. And there's a big difference between this and understanding. This critical difference is important to understanding how to understand truth, because reality in itself is logos. It's mathematical frequency. But we communicate through mythos, through stories, through human-invented language, through, colorful, emotional phrasing. Now, there's nothing wrong with this, right? Stories are great, emotions are wonderful, and that's all beautiful. But when you want to get to truth, well, what do you want to do? You don't want to have emotions and colorful you want to get to the logos. So there's a difference, all right? So this is what a lot of people think, that as Hyperions, you guys are so against emotions, you guys are you're just like robots. No, there's just a difference between truth and experience. And when you want to get to truth, you want logos, you want mathematics, you want reason. And then when you want experience, that's when you want stories and music and emotion and all the beauty that comes with. So it's not that we're against emotions. It's just that there are two different categories, and each one has to be approached in a different way. You want to approach truth via logic and reason and mathematics, and then when you experience, you want to immerse yourself in it. So if you're trying to understand truth, you don't want to start bringing in emotions and stories. And when you're trying to have an experience, right? Well, you don't want to go to an orgy and start doing math equations. Right? You're not going to have a good time. People are going to kick you out. You're not going to be real welcome there. But you see what I'm saying? It's not that one is right and one is wrong. Well, I mean, when it comes to truth, one is right. But there are just different there's truth and there's experience, and they need to be approached in a different way. Now, of course, we can use metaphors and picture thinking to try and approximate and get close to truth if you're new to it, but those are sort of like training wheels and crutches that eventually need to be getting rid of when your muscles are finally strong enough for you to be able to walk on your own. So metaphors and stories can be helpful tools as long as you realize that they're helpful tools and you don't take them literally. This is why, if you interpret mainstream religion, if you interpret religious stories as just metaphors, I don't have a problem with it at all. What I have a problem with is when people take it literally. And see, so there's a big difference here. So, in human phenomenal terms, logos evolved from mythos. So, in human phenomenal terms, logos evolved from. So here's the thing. Okay, let me see how I can say this concisely. In human phenomenal terms, logos evolved from mythos. What this means is that when humans were developing, they, you can imagine, they learned by stories, metaphors, parables. And eventually, they evolved the ability to use conscious logic, conscious reason, conscious mathematics. So in human terms, logos is a later development that evolved from picture thinking. But in ontological terms, that's not true. In ontological terms, reason, frequency, is what really is. It's the code that allows for everything else to come into existence. So think of it sort of like a video game, okay? So in a video game, imagine that this video game that's so realistic, it's like a simulation of reality. So imagine that it's a super realistic video game, and you even have evolution within this video game. So imagine this video game is based on a code, and that code is logos. But within that video game world, you're going to have creatures that start to evolve. And so you'll have cave people and bicameralism and all that sort of thing. So when you have humans that start to evolve in that world, they're going to start telling stories and communicate through picture thinking. But they will eventually evolve to be able to consciously understand the code. So do you see how ultimately reality is code? But within the game, creatures evolve that don't yet understand the code. They understand reality through mythos, through picture thinking, through stories, but then eventually evolve the capability to consciously understand the code, which is themselves ultimately, which is the code itself. And this is very important to understand, because this is the purpose of all reality. Reality is the code that generates a dream world that it can then insert itself into via avatars. And then those avatars can eventually begin to consciously understand the code as itself. That's what we are doing right now. Reality is mathematics. Reality is frequency. We are beings of frequency. We are mathematics. That's what we are. But the vast majority of humanity doesn't understand that. And when we, as Hyperions, begin to understand that reality is frequency, that reality is mathematics, we are understanding what we truly are. So we unconsciously generated this dream world to insert ourselves into so that we can understand ourselves. And in terms of Hegel's philosophy, Hegelianism, this is the idea which generates the natural world, which eventually becomes spirit. So for Hegel, you have what reality is in itself, which is the idea, which is a system of pure reason that then others itself, and now you have reality for itself, and the othering of the idea is nature, the natural world. And then within that, humanity starts to evolve. They start to form societies. They start to question themselves. They start to form higher concepts. And this societal structure of consciousness evolving is spirit. And then this is the absolute in and for itself. So you have reality in itself, reality for itself, and then reality in and for itself. To basically really, put it, a simple metaphor that I really like is that it's sort of like you have God, which is us, which is all of us. And that's reality in itself, that generates a mirror, that's the natural world, nature, that allows God to see itself, because we're seeing ourselves in nature. This is us othered. But we don't yet realize that our reflection is us, because humans walk around and they don't realize that their reflection, that what they're looking at is them. They don't realize it. And then finally, that's the third stage, when God, us, recognizes ourselves in the mirror as what we are, as the creators of the mirror and the reflection in the mirror. When we finally look around and go, oh, hey, all this, you, everything, that's me. It's all me. Just like when you're in a dream, you think that the dream is not you, but eventually, if you become lucid, you realize, oh, wait, this is my dream. This is all me. Same thing here. Humanity is just currently in the state where they're looking at the dream world and not realizing that it's them. And this is why we are literally the next evolutionary step. Again, this is not hyperbole. We are the next step in consciousness. We are those that have recognized ourselves in the mirror of nature and the mirror of each other. And this is why we concentrate so much on having the avatar, monadic, and absolute perspectives. Always remember to be thinking about that and incorporating these perspectives and having a better and better understanding of these perspectives, because that is key. So, reality is rational information, mathematics, that generates this dream world, the holos, which is a space-time representation of frequency in terms of Fourier mathematics. And we begin to understand ourselves and wake up to the fact that that is what we are when we reach this level of consciousness. And by this level, I mean right now, me looking at you and talking to you. Like, this is us. As I communicate this to you, and as your internal concept and reality tunnel starts to upgrade and reflect that, you are literally stepping into a new self-consciousness. And humanity at large is stepping into a new self-consciousness. And this is why we need to serve as the selector function, the I, the awareness, the ego of the earth, as we begin to design a world society based on mind and archetypes, and structuring the world according to a living mind rather than a dead corporate machine. That's why the world is in a shit state, because the world is designed like a corporate machine. No, we need to design the world like a living mind, and those who are aware of ourselves as what we are need to serve as the selector function, the I, the ego of that world. So, continuing here, in human phenomenal terms, logos evolved from mythos. Stories, usually about gods, came first. And then philosophy was born, which sought to explain the gods and understand their actions, or even to offer natural explanations, and that omitted the gods. So first you have, stories about gods, people trying to understand reality that way. Then philosophy was born. And then philosophy tried to, well, what are the gods? How can we really understand them? And then as it evolved even more, it started to omit the gods entirely. And like, well, how can we understand reality without even referencing the gods? And this is how reason starts to be born. It's often marked as Thales is usually given the honor of being the first philosopher, as Thales started to try to understand reality based on rational causes and things like this, rather than appeal to faith or something like this. In religions, mainstream Abrahamic religions, God and his actions are never subjected to any scrutiny, right? So in mainstream religion, God and his actions are never subject to any scrutiny, which means if God does it, it's right. It's right because God does it. So God did it, it must be right. You never have this, question. People in mainstream religion go, well, was it right for God to do that? It's just, no, God did it, so it's right. Additionally, those who are, subscribed to mainstream religion don't ask how their God can exist, what he's made of, or how he makes the world, or how he interacts with it, how and why he operates as he does, and so on. And this is very, very true. Remember, I grew up in a mainstream religious household, so whenever you ask questions like, oh, well, how could God exist? How could God create the world? The answer that you're given is that, well, that's just beyond humans' capacity to understand it. You can't understand. Sorry, humans just can't grasp it, so, no point in thinking about it. And that's what the answer or the non-answer that one is given. So everything is presented in terms of simplistic stories and harsh commandments that people must obey or suffer hell. We just talked about this in one of my recent videos about Jesus invented hell. So you have this idea here that you aren't given any sort of rational explanation. You're not given any. You are just given commandments. and punishments and rewards and stories. No reason here. No one is permitted to challenge God or his methods, or to doubt that what is said of him is true. Silly stories are elevated to truths, proofs, axioms, and principles of existence and life. Now, in reality, man-made mythos evolved from natural logos. Yeah, that's what we were talking about, right? In terms of humanity, humans evolved the capacity to consciously reason, but in terms of ontological reality, humans can only exist because reality is underpinned by that logos structure, that rational structure, mathematical frequency. So, in truth, words evolved from numbers because that's all that exists. And remember, in terms of Hyperianism and ontological mathematics, what are numbers? What are numbers? What are they? So if you think in terms of abstract mathematics, well, you think of marks on paper, 1, 2, 3, 4. But in terms of ontological mathematics, numbers are frequencies. Numbers are different frequencies. So remember, people have a really hard time understanding this when they're new to Ont math or Hyperianism. That in Hyperianism, when we say that reality is math and we say that numbers are real, we're not thinking of like 1s and 2s and 3s floating around. That's silly. No, it's frequency. Numbers are frequencies. It's a structure of relational information. What is a sinusoid? Reality is made of sinusoidal waves. Reality is made of frequencies. And these frequencies are a system of rational relationships. So, here, if you just take a look, once again here, I mean, this is what reality is composed of. Frequencies. And so when we talk about numbers and on math, we're talking about frequencies. And these are sinusoids. And what these are, they are just structures of rational relationships. So, a better way to look at this would be, let's look at this one here. Why isn't it showing up? It should be. Oh, I know why it's not showing up. There we go. So again, look, here's a sinusoidal wave. It is simply a structure of information related to each other in a certain way. Right? It's a structure of rational relationship. And this is why why Hyperianism and Ont math is so powerful. Because there's some people out there, like, for example, his name, Tom Campbell, the physicist Tom Campbell, who says, well, reality is based on information. Okay, but what do you mean by it's based on information? What? 1s and 0s? What is information? And see, in Hyperianism, we know that all this is, that reality is based on sinusoidal waves, and a sinusoidal wave is a structure of rational information that relates to itself. This is all self-relating. And it rationally implies each other. What do you mean by it rationally implies each other? Well, like, for example, in order to have positive 1, you have to have negative 1. Positive 1 implies negative 1. Because positive 1 on itself has nothing to reference. And so it's meaningless. Just like you can't have up without down. You can't have a hill without a valley. Imagine if valleys didn't exist. If valleys didn't exist, hills wouldn't exist. Because if everything was a hill, there wouldn't be a hill anymore. Well, likewise, with you can't have positive without negative, because they relate to and imply each other. They necessarily give rise to one another. And so when you have something like a sinusoidal wave and Euler's circle that goes along with it, it is a rationally self-relating structure of reason itself, that is a network of self-relating information. So we go so far above and beyond any of these, proposed theories out there. But let's continue. So in reality, man-made mythos evolved from natural logos. So really, words evolved from numbers, right? Because reality is frequency. That's it. That's all it is. And then reality, through the phase relations in Fourier mathematics, gave rise to the natural world, the universe, the holos, and then humans evolved, and then we began language. But language depends on the underlying frequency. So really, ontologically, words came from frequency. I mean, just imagine trying to even have words without frequency. It would be an impossibility. I mean, we start talking about wave mechanics. I mean, of course, it's a different sort of wave. It's dealing with sound waves, but ultimately, sound waves depend on ontological waves of mind, ontological frequencies, because you could not have air. Air is simply a mathematical wave function. So, words evolved from numbers. Human language evolved from the language of nature, which is mathematics. But when words evolved, they lost all of their precision and logical connectedness in the process. So absurdities such as 2 + 2 = 5 that cannot be said in natural language are readily sayable in man-made languages. And this is what's so important. Through man-made language, you can say 2 + 2 = 5. You can say that. You can say 2 + 2 = 74. You can say 2 + 2 = chocolate chicken. You can say any kind of absurdity that you so will. But in ontological language, in the language of frequency, of reality, you cannot generate an untrue statement. If we're using Ont Math, we cannot generate a statement such as 2 + 2 = 5. It's impossible. You cannot do it. It cannot be done. So, in the development of language, we began to be able to communicate with each other, but we lost all of the precision and logical interconnectedness of the ontological language of reality. So this is why, to understand truth, we must understand ontological mathematics, because that's what reality is in itself. Language, you can say all sort of BS. You can say 2 + 2 = 7. You can say God created the earth in 7 days. And you can generate all kinds of absurdities, inconsistencies, and incompleteness with human-made language. And that includes human-made systems of logic as well, as Gödel's incompleteness theorems show. That if you have a system of human-invented language that relies on multiple axioms rich enough to capture arithmetic, you're going to generate either incompleteness or inconsistency. So, this is why we have all these problems when attempting to communicate with each other. Because human-invented language, whatever language that may be, is capable of generating things and statements that don't reflect how reality is in itself. But ontological mathematics cannot generate false statements, as long as it's done correctly, of course. You can interject human errors, but ontological mathematics in itself, when it's executed properly, it cannot generate errors, because it's literally what existence is made of. So again, as long as it's done accurately, which is very important, it cannot generate any incorrect results. People can invent words and concepts that have no relation to reality. Languages are simply number codes invented by humans. That is, every word is actually a mathematical function expressed non-mathematically in terms of empirical content, rather than rational form. So here's a great quote by Soren Kierkegaard that says, there are two ways to be fooled. And I really like this quote. There are two ways to be fooled. One is to believe what isn't true. The other is to refuse to believe what is true. So you are going to be fooled if you believe in what isn't true, or if you refuse to believe in what is true. So followers of mainstream religion, they believe what isn't true. And scientists refuse to believe what is true. So do you see the difference? But it both leads to folly. Those who follow a mainstream religion, they believe what isn't true. That God created everything, that, everything. I don't need to say it anymore. You know all the absurdities that come with it. And then scientific materialists, they go the other route. They refuse to believe what is true. Ontological mathematics. That math is true. That this is a reality of mind and not matter. They refuse to believe what is true. And that's the human curse. Humanity is wholly alienated from the truth. But we as Hyperions are here to lift that curse. That's our goal. We are here to lift that curse and bring truth to humanity. So the cosmic alphabet, and this is a really good way to understand it. Sinusoids, ontological numbers, are the alphabet of existence. So if you're having a hard, we talk a lot about Fourier mathematics and how ultimately what exists is frequencies. And then through Fourier mathematics, we can have the space-time representation of these frequencies, which give rise to everything around you. But if you're having a hard time understanding that, a great way to understand it is like this. Sinusoids, those are frequencies, are like the alphabet of existence. So imagine a book being like the universe, and the alphabet being like frequency. This is a simple way to understand it. The universe is like a book, and the alphabet is like frequency. Well, the book relies on the alphabet to exist. If you remove the alphabet, it'd be a blank book. There'd be nothing in it. But you see how the different frequencies, the different letters, when you combine them in different ways, can produce marvelous stories. And depending on how you combine them, will create different stories. And you can create a extremely exciting book. And this is how you can understand reality. Reality is frequencies. And the way you combine those frequencies, you get a universe with all these, the story of me and you. All of us, all the world events, all history. History is the idea emptied out onto time. History is our story. And it's all made possible by the different combinations of frequency. Just like the different alphabet combinations result in a different story. And people ask, because we have universal cycles. Different, universal cycles. And people ask, well, is each universal cycle going to be exactly the same? No, it's not going to be exactly the same. Each universal cycle is going to be different because we can combine those frequencies into different patterns, just like we can combine the alphabet to produce different stories, different kinds of books. So yes, we live in a cyclical universe in that the universe will die and then a new universe will be born through a new Big Bang. But each iteration will be as varied as there are books, because we can combine frequencies in different ways. So frequencies, they're the alphabet of existence. They are a numerical alphabet. The words, sentences, and books they generate are grander wave functions that define our reality. And God is the ultimate wave function. So not only is it a book, but it's a book that where the story is evolving, and the end of the story is apotheosis, where Abraxas is fully awakened, fully self-actualized. The entirety of the universe is rippling with the brilliant light of consciousness. And that is the omega point. That is the teleological end goal of existence. So numbers, frequencies, remember in Hyperianism, numbers are frequencies. Numbers, frequencies, are the truth of reality. And so the language of existence itself is based on frequency, numbers. But when we begin to evolve consciousness, it then starts to be, our consciousness becomes, starts to communicate through words. And this involves man-made language, and this is inherently false. So our consciousness, a human consciousness, is all about beliefs, opinions, interpretations, conjectures, hypotheses, suppositions, and words are always inconsistent and incomplete. But that's why we are stepping into a new form of consciousness where we can begin to understand the true language of existence and begin to understand truth and what reality truly is, instead of being mired in this web of words, this net of words. Words give us mythos. Words give us stories. Words give us Vorstellung. Words give us picture thinking. Numbers, frequency, gives us logos, reason. Mythos is false and logos is true. Anything man-made is intrinsically false. Words always lead people astray. Numbers put them on the road to truth. Math is truth, everything else is wrong, and that's the secret of existence. That's the essence of the truth itself. And again, I just always want to emphasize, because this is the part where people always think, wow, you guys are so boring and robotic. This is where I really want to emphasize again, there is a difference between truth and experience. Words and mythos, that's for experience. And truth, that is where we bring in frequency. This is where we bring in mathematics. And so when we say that something is wrong, this is not some kind of moral judgment or some kind of value judgment based on what is acceptable. It is saying what is true with a capital true as with a capital T, as in what accurately reflects what reality is in itself. Reality isn't made of words, therefore words are wrong. Reality isn't made of stories, therefore stories are wrong. It doesn't mean that stories are bad. It means that they're not true. You see the difference? So we are not against experience. Experience is beautiful. It's wonderful. But it's not true. It's not the essence of what reality is. It's not, at least when it comes to the formal aspect of existence. Remember, there's also a difference between form and content. There's also a big difference between form and content. But if we're trying to get to the form of existence, the structure of existence, that is mathematical frequency. Now, there's the information and the experience and the qualia that the mathematical frequency conveys. And there is the qualitative phenomenological aspect of what it is like to be mathematics that involves emotions and experience and all that. But it's just about understanding that there's different categories and different time and a different place for everything else. Just like, people come in and think that because we're all about reason, it means that we're against emotion, that we're against intuition, and that we're against the senses. No, these things just all have a different place. We've done live streams about this before. It's just that one is the guiding and filtering functions that guide and filter all the rest. And so that's the really important thing here that I want to get across to you guys. That when it comes to truth, insert clapping emojis here. When it comes to truth, we need to think in terms of mathematics and frequency, ontological mathematics. Not in stories, because you can generate all sort of absurdities. You can say 2 plus 2 equals 74. You can say God created the world in 7 days. You can say that, you know, you're going to go to hell if you touch your pee-pee too much. You're going to generate all these absurdities if you are using the wrong tool to try and approach truth. So when we want to get to truth, we want to get into what is objectively true. Again, if I say the word God, you know, in a room of 10 people, each person will interpret that completely different. But 2 plus 2 equals 4, that's the same for everyone. 2 plus 2 is universally and objectively true. And this is why using mathematics is how we approach truth, because this is a mathematical reality. And you have to use what reality is to explain it. You have to speak in reality's language to unravel the mystery and the poetry of the universe. So, again, I just really want to emphasize, because people you know, miss this point a lot. Nothing wrong with experience. Experience is fantastic. And there's nothing wrong with mythos as long as you understand that mythos is mythos. There's nothing wrong with stories as long as you understand that stories are stories. There's nothing wrong with emotion as long as you understand emotion doesn't reveal truth. It's not a truth revealer. But reality would be really damn boring if there were no emotions, if there were no stories, if there were no experiences. That would be horrible. Who'd want to have a reality? No, that'd be terrible reality. So it's just important to realize that, you know, this straw man version that people create of Hyperianism or ontological mathematics, where people think that it's cold and just about removing all the qualitative aspects of existence, which is not true whatsoever. Holographic theory does free the mind of media. That is, the mind can exist without any physical medium. So the mind can exist without a physical medium. You know, same thing with light. Light does not need a medium to propagate. And that is because light is mind. Mind is light. So once again, if you're new here, mind, light, energy, mathematics, and frequency, these are all different words for the same thing. And do you see how, again, how words are very, very imprecise? But yes, light, mind, frequency, these are all different words. Mathematics, these are all different words for the same thing. And so the mind can exist without any physical medium, as can light, because light is mind. Of course, in a human being, the mind is expressed through the medium, the hardware of the brain. So we have our brain, we have our avatars, and this is the medium through which our mind expresses itself. This is like the multiplayer game that we all plug into to be able to interact. So this is the character, the avatar, that our mind uses as the medium to which to express itself. Just like art, you know, you can have a paintbrush and a canvas, and that is the medium through which you are expressing your inner world. And your everything about you, your avatar, is the expression of you as a mind. It's the medium, the hardware for your expression. But the brain is not the mind. The brain is what the mind operates through. Just like a radio is not, you know, inside a radio, there's not little tiny musicians. Just like when you play a computer game, your computer character is what you operate through. You aren't literally the computer character in the computer game, but you're using the computer character to operate through. So the brain is not the mind. The brain and your avatar is what the mind operates through. Remember, always have the three perspectives: the avatar, the monadic, mirror image here, avatar, monadic, and absolute perspectives. So, ontologically, hologramic theory must be rooted in mathematical singularities, monadic minds outside space and time. A monad is a singularity. These are immaterial, autonomous Fourier frequency domains. which by the Fourier laws of holography can generate the space-time universe, which is a Fourier projection of mind. So once again, matter is holographic. It's mind projected, just like a dream is mind projected. Same thing with material reality. It is mind projected. How is this possible? It is, and this is what's funny is I get a lot of people who usually they're scientific materialists and go, oh, this is just a bunch of word salad. No, it's not. We can literally explain how matter is a holographic projection of mind through a Fourier transform. You have frequencies, and through the Fourier transform, you can have a space-time representation of frequency. Okay, and then when you have these frequencies that have non-orthogonal phase shifted frequencies, the Fourier transform of phase shifted frequencies result in matter. That's a space-time representation. So do the math. It's all in the math. It really is. Okay? So matter is holographic. There is no such thing as scientific matter. That is, as matter, something independent from mind, from which mind is derived. Matter as something that exists independent of the mind does not exist. All matter is dependent on mind. So the idea that matter can exist independently of mind, this is the falsest of all claims about the true nature of reality. Again, it's like saying a computer game could exist without the code. It is so absurd. It is laughably absurd. It's just humanity hasn't reached a level of consciousness to realize how crazy it is. Just like hundreds of years ago, people everywhere believed in not everywhere, but most people believed in God. People are now beginning to realize that that is incredibly absurd. And in 100 years from now, people will realize that it's just as absurd to believe that matter can exist independently from mind. That this is a material reality. That will be looked at as just as absurd. Because again, it's as crazy as believing a video game can exist without the code, or that a dream can exist without a dreamer. It's impossible. It's absurdly crazy. It's just humanity is at such a low level of consciousness that they don't have the cognitive faculties to grasp how absurd it truly is. They are sleepwalkers caught in a net of sleep and dreams, to quote, paraphrase Gustav Meyrink. Quantum mechanics, in which it is impossible to specify the conditions necessary for materialism, that is, precisely definable simultaneous position and momentum in spacetime, definitively proves that scientific matter does not exist and that physicalism is false. However, scientists, as blinkered ideological dogmatists, refuse to confront the unavoidable implications of their own theories. So the brain mathematically transforms frequencies that exists out there. So with the brain, what we do here is that we have frequency information, and then through Fourier mathematics, we can transform frequency into space-time representations. And so what the brain does is it mathematically transforms frequencies that exist, when we're saying out there for now. But what is out there? It's the cosmic mind, the one, the singularity, the source made of sinusoidal monadic minds. By the way, in the questions and answers, we talked a lot about quantum mechanics. We talked a lot about the source. We talked a lot about the absolute. We talked a lot about the cosmic mind. But if you're watching the replay, all the questions and answers get cut out. So you have to make sure that you join us live, okay? Make sure you're here when we're actually live, because the questions and answers are really, really important. And you're going to be missing all that. So make sure you have notifications turned on, so you know when I go live, so you catch all that part of it. The brain itself is a hologram, as is the whole body. and it's constructed from intermonadic interference patterns. The subjective bodies you encounter in your sleep, rather than objective bodies you encounter when you are awake, are intramonadic holograms. So here we have intermonadic interference patterns and intramonadic interference patterns, okay? The objective world, the holos, results from intermonadic interference patterns, and your dreams result from intramonadic interference patterns. And again, I want to highlight how far we go. Scientific materialism has no idea what dreams are made of, how dreams can exist. And yet we can define them clearly and precisely. Do you guys see that this is literally the science of the future that will be taught in schools all throughout the world in the future? I want you to understand the power here. You are stepping into the future right now with us by integrating this information. So the holos, the objective world, are intermonadic interference patterns. What does intermonadic mean? Well, that means that they are interference patterns that arise from the frequencies of all monads operating together. So each monad is a container of frequencies. And when those frequencies mix together, they result in an interference pattern that results in the space-time universe of the holos. Internal, intramonadic interference patterns are when you're getting interference patterns resulting from your own internal frequencies. And so dreams, your personal dreams, are the results of your personal monadic frequencies. The objective holos is the result of all frequencies from all monads interacting together. So you see the difference. Well, we can have intermonadic interference patterns, which results in the space-time holos, and then internal monadic holograms that result in personal dreams. Yeah, it says right here, right? No scientist has ever explained how dreams can resemble reality, yet differ from it, right? So your dreams resemble reality. When you are having a dream, you think that it's real. Yet there's something different about them, right? You think there is something different about your dreams. So they're very, very similar to reality, but yet also different from it. So what's the difference? The difference is that objective reality is composed of the frequencies of all monads together, and your personal dreams are just your frequencies. That's why when you become lucid in your dream, you can change things by thinking about them, because it's subject to, they're your frequencies. That's why your dreams can take on different forms according to your emotions, according to your mindset. The objective world, it's not made out of just your frequencies. So it's not yours to control. And so that's why the objective world is stable. It's not changing at every second because of someone's emotions. I mean, it is if they get angry and punch a hole in the wall, but not just by manipulating the frequencies directly themselves, if that makes sense. I mean, that gets a little dicey depending on, words. But you know what I'm saying. And no scientist has ever been able to explain. Again, I just talked about the power of Aunt Math and the power of understanding this information. No scientist has ever explained how dreams can resemble reality yet differ from it. Here, we can easily explain it. It's your personal frequencies versus all frequencies together. That's why it seems very similar to reality, but you can alter it. Whereas in the objective reality, you cannot alter it. They're not your frequencies to control. That's why it exhibits stability, stable patterns. The answer is that dreams take place within individual minds, hence are subjective, whereas waking takes place within the collective mind, right? So, your personal dream takes place within your individual mind. You as a monad. When you go to sleep and dream, takes place within your mind as an individual monad. When you are awake in the holos, this is the dream taking place within the collective mind. That's the difference right there. When you're awake, it takes place within the collective mind, and hence is objective, and everyone agrees on the world's reality since they're all sharing it. It's like when you join a multiplayer game. We're all sharing that server. That's just an analogy, just a metaphor, so it's not perfect, but you get the idea. God, the cosmic mind, which is us, as a collective, the singularity at the center of existence, is the source of holograms, but is not a hologram itself, hence cannot be detected by the senses, by experiments, or by science. It's noumenal, not phenomenal, metaphysical, not physical, mathematical, not scientific. It's transcendent and immanent. It's platonic. So the cosmic mind, the source, is the mind of God, of us. And nature is, the physical world, is the body, the avatar of the cosmic mind. And we talked about how Abraxas, or the absolute, is both the source and the holos. So the mental aspect of God, the cosmic mind, cannot be detected by the physical senses or by experiments, because it's not within the physical world. Just like your mind isn't inside of your body. Well, the cosmic mind is not inside of the hologram. The hologram is inside of the mind. Just like your dream is within your mind. The interference pattern is the basis of the hologram, but is never the hologram itself. Likewise, the mental singularity is the interference pattern that generates the cosmic hologram, but is not itself a hologram. Science studies only the hologram and its properties, and never its non-holographic source. The hologram is sensory and the singularity non-sensory. Experiments can be performed on the hologram, but not on the mental interference pattern from which the hologram is made, since this pattern is immaterial and outside space and time. Science has never understood the difference between the noumenal and the phenomenal, information carried and information carrier. Science studies the matrix and never the reality that stands behind the matrix. Right, so science studies the game world but never the code. The state immediately prior to the Big Bang was a 100% non-holographic state. All phase information had been abolished. And without that, there could be no hologram. And that's really important to understand. I'm going to do a video on this very soon. I talk about it in my book, Ontological Mathematics, The Science of the Future, but I'll do a video on it at some point soon, really talking about phase information and how phase information of frequencies is what gives rise to space and time. So previous to the Big Bang, all phase information was abolished, and there was therefore no holographic interference pattern, no hologram was generated. And the state prior to the Big Bang was a state of pure light, pure orthogonality, pure symmetry. Because remember, light is mind, and pure mind, there is sort of a difference between pure mind and impure mind, right? Pure mind. Impure mind, we would perhaps call mind that exhibits phase. But the state prior to the Big Bang was pure mind, pure light, pure orthogonality, pure symmetry. It's a category error for phenomenalist science to believe that the mind, the soul, and God can ever be objects of science. That's to entirely misunderstand the nature of reality. So the failure of science is already built into its paradigm. The paradigm of science is empirical and usually materialist. For the materialist paradigm, it is by definition. So the empirical materialist paradigm necessarily has its limits built into it, and therefore can literally never get to the essence of existence. I mean, geez, just the falsification principle is a inherent limitation built into the scientific paradigm. Truth can never be falsified, but science only accepts theories that can be falsified, which means that ipso facto, science can never, ever arrive at truth, because they don't accept theories that can't be falsified, and truth is unfalsifiable. So, Kant said that the noumenal domain was unknowable. Science goes further and says that the noumenal domain doesn't exist. In fact, the noumenal domain is pure math. The cosmic hologram, the scientific universe, is constructed from monadic minds, and then interpreted and experienced by these same minds. It's nothing inside the brain that performs this function. There isn't a physical little man, a homunculus inside the brain, watching everything on a screen. The I that uses the brain isn't in the brain. It's an immaterial monad outside space and time. It links to the brain and controls it, just as a pilot remotely links to a drone and controls it. So, your mind links to and uses the brain, but it's not inside the brain. Just like you aren't literally inside a video game when you control a video game character, but you use the video game character to control and interact in the game. Now, it seems like that you exist in the physical world, but you as a mind don't exist in the physical world. It's just an illusion because you're experiencing through your senses. And again, think of it like this. If you have a VR headset on, right? If you're wearing a VR headset, it seems like you are in the VR world. Right? It seems like you're looking around. It seems like you are in the VR world. But are you really in the VR world? No, you're outside the VR world. So right now, your senses, they're like a permanently attached VR headset. So it seems like you are in the physical world. But you're not in the physical world. You're outside the physical world in the source. So the VR analogy is a very, very powerful one. So St. Francis said, what we are looking for is what is looking. The monadic soul is what is looking. What's the one and only truth people can agree on? Numbers. No one can agree on words. I mean, just go look at my channel comments. Oh my God, especially the ones about religion. You have everyone talking about a different definition of God. Some people are talking about the mainstream religion definition. Some people are talking about the esoteric definition. Some people are talking about a cosmic oneness, and they're all arguing with each other. No one can agree on words. No one can agree on feelings. No one can agree on sensations and mystical intuitions. Right? You might taste food and it might taste great to you. Someone else might taste it, might taste horrible. Someone else might watch a movie and think it's so sad. Someone else might think it's funny. Like, oh, that's, No one can agree on feelings, sensations, and mystical intuitions. No one can agree on religions, spiritual systems, political systems, or science. Numbers are precise. 2 + 2 = 4. If you understand how reason and math works, 2 + 2 = 4, and it's inarguable. It's true for everyone. If you understand how math works, of course. You have to understand how math works. You have to have that cognitive capacity. But numbers are precise. 2 + 2 = 4 is true for everyone. Doesn't matter how you feel about it. It's still true. There can be no infallible truth in words. Words are ambiguous. Reason and logic can be properly used only in relation to numbers. However, 2 numbers are considered rogue, and they cause mayhem, and no one can agree on them. They are 0 and infinity. These are the 2 numbers in which all the secrets of existence are buried. This is where the truth resides, the final answer to existence. Are you willing to jump into the zero infinity abyss? Take the leap of reason. The mystery of existence is the mystery of mathematics. It's the mystery of zero and infinity. Zero reflects the mystery of dimensionlessness, of origins, of the indestructible. Infinity reflects immortality, the certainty of the afterlife, of energy that can never run out. The mystery of existence has no need of feelings or the senses. It's accessible solely to reason and intellect. And I'm actually going to be doing a video very, very soon I have planned all about zero and perhaps infinity. But specifically, I want to be talking about a very important aspect of zero that will be coming out soon, most likely. But the thing that we really have to understand here is that when we are trying to grasp the nature of existence, we have to realize that the nature of existence is frequency, is mathematics, and it can only be understood through frequency and through mathematics. Words are always going to lead us astray. Words and human concepts are static, still, and unmoving. They're little boxes. Frequency is in motion. The truth of reality is a reality of movement and motion. And the interactions of, it is true that reality is based on being, but being gives rise to becoming. Becoming is possible because of being. Hegel understood this as well. Hegel understood that being and nothing give rise to becoming. So Hegel is a synthesis of Parmenides and Heraclitus, where Hegel realized you needed the being of Parmenides to give rise to the becoming of Heraclitus. So, but anyways, words are static, still, unmoving, and changing, whereas reality is interacting frequencies, forming wave functions that are constantly changing. Now, we have to use words to get along in the world, but we have to realize that when we want to get to truth, we need to use the language of existence to understand the truth of existence. And that can only be done through ontological mathematics, through frequency, through understanding reality rationally and logically. And Hyperianism is all about understanding the true nature of existence, so that once we understand that, we can form and shape reality according to our will, and that will give us the freedom to have amazing experiences together. And that's the thing. People think that we are against experience. We are not against experience. We just know that reason and logic is what is truth with a capital T. And reason and logic is what will allow us to create a world of experiences. And that's why, people get this idea that like we're against love too. No, we're not against love. We just know that reason is what will change the world and allow us to create a world of love. Love isn't what will change the world. Love is what we get when we change the world. Reason is what will change the world. And likewise, experiences are fantastic. And when we have a world of reason, led by reason, when we have a world that's organized according to a living mind, rather than a dead corporate machine, but a living mind, then we will be able to create worlds of experiences. Worlds of experiences. And that is something to look forward to. That is what lies in store for us as we create a new world and actualize new Terra. But we have to get all these, have all our ducks in a row and realize that there is a difference between truth, and there is a difference between truth and experience, and that words will always have fallibility. Words will never completely even as I'm talking to you right now, all my words to you right now are approximations. It's only when we get into the math itself that we start getting into certainty. But we need words to communicate. So words are necessary to communicate, but we have to realize that words are always going to be approximations. It is only the frequency itself, math itself, that will get us to ultimate truth.